Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AI Healthcare Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Reed, and today we are joined with my friend, Anson Whitmer, who is the CEO of Mental, which is an app that is aiming to solve men's mental health care in the United States. Thank you so much for your time, Anson.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And what drove you to start Mental?
Yeah. And it's so many different ways mental is a culmination of my career to this point in time. A lot of ways that career started when I was 19. My uncle, who had been living with us to help us through some tough times, he killed himself. And that motivated me to get my PhD in neuroscience. I wanted to understand why people like my uncle couldn't let go of his childhood and how that ultimately led to depression and then suicide. Ended up out at Stanford. I was doing research on depression and anxiety. And my cousin, other side of the family, he actually reached out to me a few days beforehand, and I didn't realize it was a call for help because I didn't get back to him in time, and he killed himself as well. And that experience motivated me to leave academia. Uh, we were just making tremendous strides in understanding causes of mental illness, but we were just doing so little to scale up its solutions. And generally, this is just kind of an issue with academics. A little bit slow. And if we leave it to academics, it's going to be another 100 years until we see real progress in addressing the suicide crisis and mental health issues. I ended up moving over to Calm, and I was already deep machine learning, et cetera, and joined it as the founding data scientist. My co-founder at Mental is the founding engineer over there. And we grew it up from a small company that no one wanted to invest in. In fact, we would often get feedback from investors that meditation was too niche. I was One said it was something only done on college campuses and at Burning Man. But over the course of 3-4 years, we built it up into something that millions of people are doing, a $2 billion company. But what was really clear during our time there, I was in the data, is that we weren't getting through to guys.
Mhm.
And if you look at the space, it's really clear that no one is. There's one report saying there's 20,000 mental health apps that have been built. A lot have been built explicitly for women, so they're not getting through to guys. And the general use apps, they tend to be used 2 to 3 times more by women than men, so they're also not getting through. Uh, and the issue to me when I stepped back and looked at it is that men are 80% of suicides. So if we don't figure out a way to get through to guys, then we are never going to resolve this crisis. And reality is, uh, the way men approach mental health, we just have a really different culture around it. And if we expect one size fits all solutions to work here, we're going to be disappointed. It is why we're currently disappointed. And so realize, like, why don't we take all this kind of science about how men approach mental health and what they want out of solutions differently, and build something brand new that is from the ground floor, built for their needs, designed to meet them where they're at. And that's what mental is.
And what was the knowledge or lack of knowledge around men's health men's mental health, excuse me?
Yeah. I, I mean, I think there is kind of generally this assumption that the same approach should work, uh, regardless of gender. But it's, I mean, a lot of people intuitively know that there's this difference, which is, for example, my wife recently was telling me about a problem she was having, and I immediately started thinking about how do we solve this? How do we help? And she was like, "Hey, Anson, stop! just, just, just tell me that you hear me and that you feel bad for me and that it's tough." And so I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry," and I validated how she was feeling, and that was what she needed from me. uh, you talk to a group of guys about something you're going through, and if your group of friends don't start helping you problem solve and get to some sort of action you could take to fix the issue, you don't, or a lot of guys don't feel heard in that situation. And therapy, a lot of people discuss that it has kind of a gender bias because it really focuses on feelings and less focused on solving problems. And if you want to meet guys where you're at, it's like, well, let's start by what's your problem. Let's see if we could help you solve it more quickly, more efficiently. hey, maybe sometimes you actually have to go into feelings because that's where your blocker's at, but that isn't where you're starting. And you could just go through a lot of different examples here. We're with AI in the app that we have is one thing is really clear. It's just talking about that validation is with women seeing a therapist, that validation that you get from another person is a really important part of the process. And it can be too for guys. I'm always talking in averages here. But
Hmm.
for a lot of guys on average, talking to another person about issues, that makes them feel overly exposed. They feel ashamed, they feel embarrassed, and they pull back from that situation. So what women like in the situation is that validation from the therapist is actually what a lot of men shy away from. It's like they have the opposite response. And it's actually kind of amazing aspect of AI is that it kind of solves that problem for guys. You can get the help without exposing yourself to another human.
Hmm. And kind of going off of what you just said, it seems like is it would you say it's a lack of kind of like how do you connect the AI technology to mental health in combining the two, or is it like it just hasn't been as like carefully examined, or like why does it seem like mental health, specifically men's mental health, has not received the same, I guess, quote unquote coverage in AI as like radiology or oncology?
Yeah, good question. And I actually think AI therapy generally is one not really been solved. I think that tech is there, and the iterations we're making is bringing it to the point where it actually feels as though you are talking to a person and is as engaging as an in-person conversation. But a lot of the AI therapy doesn't feel that way. Uh, it's pretty bad. So it's one solving the problem. No one's really solved it. Um, Two, there's market for it, and it's just new. If you actually are thinking about, hey, I'm struggling with something, and I do want to get help. Right now, you ask, you think, should I go to a therapist, or maybe like a remote therapist, like a BetterHelp, and see someone over Zoom? But I don't think that many people are thinking, or should I start seeing an AI therapist? That's not even like a question people are asking yet. But I think as we see breakthroughs and how good it is, there's going to be a massive market that will open up there.
Mhm.
And and then kind of almost to your question, I think where we actually will see the market grow the most is going to be with guys, because I think, as said, women really are more likely to appreciate the validation you get from a person, and they want that, while men are trying to solve their problems on their own and are trying to avoid exposing themselves to a human. So I think where we'll see the AI therapy growth will mostly be with guys.
Oh, great. And that kind of leads into my next question quite nicely. So the goal of mental is to improve, but also increase awareness around men's mental health. And what makes y'all's technology unique to increase these two respective outcomes?
Yeah. I half the app is not the AI therapy, it is audio, and we're just having a fun time. We're building kind of these protocols out that are action oriented. They're kind of inherently a little bit competitive. They're doing something that seems cool. And I think if you look at the space, it's often feels a little bit woo woo. It feels like you're being soothed and pampered. And that's not what guys are into. They like challenge, they like more competition. And so we just launched a push up protocol and the coach is Deontay Wilder, who's 10-time heavyweight boxing champion of the world. And what it's basically is you're training your body while he's training your mindset. Um,
Hmm.
He's telling you stories about what it's like to get punched in the face by Tyson Fury and making you laugh, but also just helping you understand, wow, what is the mentality to push yourself hard, and really changing what your thoughts are in everyday life. But there's ways where you could challenge your friends. We have a challenge and see how long they could do Deontay's push-up challenge for, how long they could hold out. You see your friends are doing it. You kind of keep growing and pushing on each other, and so we're bringing this kind of competitive element to mental health. You're taking action, trying to push on each other. And to us, that really is a way to just bring guys in and get them to start realizing how much these different things we're teaching are really valuable, how much they change your life, even if you're not depressed. And really, what we're not built for guys who are in a crisis state. We're really built for guys who are just dealing with stressors of work, stressors of relationship, everyday kind of stuff, and helping them realize that if you spend a little time working on your mind, your
Mm,
life will be dramatically improved.
mm. And from a consumer standpoint, kind of what has been the overall feedback from those who have used your app?
Yeah. I One of my favorite is that you take the cold shower protocol is it's a master chief Navy SEAL teaching you how to handle stress while you are being stressed out by cold water. You always start hot and then end on cold, so it's easy to get into, relatively. Um, but what it ends up doing is like you're practicing to help you do something you want, which take cold showers, handling that stress. But these mental tools start turning on in everyday life, and that's a reports we're getting back from people. What a wild story of a guy wrote in who had working at a convenience store and been robbed, and he had a gun to his head, and it went on for like 10 minutes, and he said all the tools from the cold shower protocol just turned on, and he named off like 5 different tools, and he's like, I wasn't even trying to use them, they just like took over my mindset, and I remained calm and cool, and it wasn't that, and like made it a relatively not bad experience compared to what it could have been. And so we hear it from that level of extremeness all the way down to like dads who are like have kids yelling in the back seat, and they're not yelling back at their kids. They're remaining cool and calm. So just hearing how much it shows up in people's everyday life when all we're doing is just tweaking the morning. We're not telling people to do like a 4 hour different morning routine. We're just like tweaking the end of their shower.
Mhm,
And that changes the rest of their day. It's pretty cool.
mhm. No, I really, as someone who has the app on his phone, I really love the daily deuce and also to the kind of the coaches, so you can choose like if you want like Ricky Gervais or like Thomas Edison, and like they you can have like a conversation with them.
Yeah, we use a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor. The first part of that was built around men's shower and shave routine. And we like to say, instead of doom scrolling your way through the Daily Deuce, listen to the Daily Deuce. But again, it's only just 2 minutes, and it just changes your mindset. Some like the insights you get will reverberate with you throughout the day.
Mm. And where do you see AI playing a role in mental health in the future?
Yeah, and some of that type of content is, I think, really it's about, and this is a tough bit with AI therapy, particularly right now, is building trust.
Mhm,
Building trust that it will help you. Building trust with the company that they really are there for you and trying to help you. And so a lot of this audio stuff is for guys to see what we stand for and how much we're trying to meet them where they're at. And but then it's like, if they are going through something deeper, AI therapy could really help them through something much tougher, much more complex. And so then you kind of have like this full stack solution where it's like you're tweaking your day, you're not putting a ton of work in, but you're in a better place. But when you do have issues pop up, you're able to work through them more quickly, more efficiently.
mm.
And that's what the AI therapy side will really do.
Awesome. And what would be one particular area specifically in men's mental health that you have seen that hasn't gotten a lot of coverage or that hasn't really been understood that you believe that elected officials should become more knowledgeable about?
Yeah, I think it's often not discussed, and for understandable reasons, but the gender differences, there's in this area, uh, there's just a tremendous amount of neuroscience supporting that there's really big differences between men and women, and you could spot it with just looking at neural structure, that who's like a man versus a woman, and it has repercussions into how we treat people, what the
Mm,
solutions are, and we need to be aware of that if we're going to be able to come up with really good solutions to help improve men's mental health. These gender differences are probably one of the most critical things we take into account if we want to see an improvement in men's mental health and a reduction in the suicide crisis.
And my last question is, you, Anson, how would you like to contribute to men's mental health moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think really what is needed in this space is culturally, I think we're at a tipping point. We're getting close to one where more and more men have realized the importance of working on their mental health and the value of the tools that we have gained through science.
Hmm.
And but we're just get a bit more people over that edge, and I think it will become as normal for men to be working on their mind as it is for them to work on their body. And how do we get over to that tipping point? I believe that a big brand has tremendous capability to drive that change. I saw it at Calm. Meditation was not a normal thing when we started, and it is a normal tool that's used by many Americans now. And even if you don't use it, you know it's there for you if you do want it. Uh, and that's where we're going to get to with men's mental health in the coming couple of years. And I believe my role, Mental's role, is a brand that can make it something that men aspire to, that it's fun, that it's realize that there's a different approach that is appealing to the average guy, and we can build that.
Awesome. And yeah, because growing up, I don't remember people talking about mental health, even men's mental health. Like, did it really like kind of exponentially grow after COVID, or I've never heard of men's mental health like having like a subset within mental health.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, even just conversations about mental health and going to therapy and has changed tremendously in the last 10, 15 years. But it's also because you're seeing mental health issues have skyrocketed. The pandemic definitely caused a big spike that has been sustained since then, but we were seeing that long before the pandemic, and it is probably most clearly tied to smartphones. I mean, our lifestyles have become dramatically different. It is, we spend all day inside. We're not getting sunlight. Instead of socializing in person with people, we're socializing by likes and dislikes on social media. We our world back, like we're always comfortable. It's always 72 degrees. There's just so many different ways that modern lifestyles are different from the way we evolved. It's not surprising that we are run into more difficulties. And that's actually therapy is one great tool to deal with that. And in fact, if you therapy is often about unpacking different issues. Sometimes with some therapists, some of that happened to you as a kid, sometimes some more recent. But if you see a really good therapist, one of the first things they will do is try to understand what's going on with your lifestyle and try to fix that first. It's like if you see a therapist once a week for an hour, but you're spending 40 hours a week on TikTok, you're still going to be in a bad place. That's a silly ratio. You need to
Mhm.
solve the TikTok side of things. That will have way more impact than the hour a week of therapy. Sure, the therapist, if they're good, will spot that, and that will be the first thing they'll solve before unpacking other things. Um, but and that's actually kind of a gender difference as well, right there. Is men are more willing to work on the lifestyle aspects and change that kind of stuff. But you don't need therapy to do that. Therapy could be a very useful tool, but you can solve a lot of mental health issues without it. So I think we've seen a huge lifestyle change that's made people more aware of the problems. And over the past 10, 15 years, a couple solutions have become very prevalent. Therapy, everyone knows about therapy more and more, meditation more and more. And part of the thing we're trying to do is make people realize that those are just two tools. There's actually a lot of other tools out there. So even if you don't vibe with them, there's tons of other ways to improve your mental health. And for most men, it is really outside of that zone where they're likely to find solutions that resonate with them. And so let's build out there more. Let's make people realize just all the different ways you can make yourself feel different in everyday life. And different, it doesn't just mean like, oh, I'm happy, I'm content. For a lot of men, what they're driven towards is a feeling of fulfillment. And it's like, I feel like challenged as much as I need to, I'm pushing myself. Like I have purpose. For men, that's a place that they want to be in. And we're really driving towards helping guys kind of achieve that mental state.
So is it kind of, you know, um, kind of you're kind of making the inverse of like the famous phrase, in sports of like fighting through the pain.
Um, yeah, I mean, there is the element of discomfort uh, being really valuable. And I do think we're probably overly comfort, or we're too comfortable. Um,
Hmm.
you even look back all the way to the Stoics, they made a big issue out of like, you should occasionally make yourself uncomfortable. And why should you do that? Is because we think the way towards happiness right now or fulfillment is if you can get something you want, okay, then I'll be happy or I'll feel fulfilled. But that's a hedonic treadmill that you can never really accomplish. You get that thing and then you're like, well, what's the next thing? And you just keep chasing it. And really, how do you make yourself fulfilled? It's by appreciating what you already have. And so sometimes discomfort enables you to go, oh, actually, my house that's 72 degrees with food in the fridge, that's amazing. I'm lucky to have that house. And it enables you to take more joy in the everyday life. So we're not really focused on just like, hey, uh, we're not full Goggins where you're just like suffer and lots of pain. I think there's a component in there that
Hmm.
is important, but it is also like, how do we get more joy out of life? How do we appreciate the things we already have? How do we have more gratitude for all the good things that are actually happening to us? That, that's a very different mental state than just like trying to suffer through the pain.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you bring that up. It's like the older I get, the I start to ask myself the question more of like, do I really need to spend $40 on dinner, or can I use that $40 to like buy a book in a field that I'm interested in, that I can hopefully gain knowledge and skills in, which then could potentially, I mean, this might sound a little hedonic, but it's like increase my income. So it's kind of like you start to realize, I feel like the older you get, what's more important, but then you also like minimalize things a lot more too as well.
Yeah, well, with this podcast, your newsletter, and what you're doing, you have passion, you have purpose, you're driven towards a mission, and if you get that book and you learn that, it's like, yeah, I mean, there would be the success financial side, I think comes about it, but it strikes me that you're also more focused on this mission, and the success and that stuff kind of pops out of it. It will pop out of it if you're determined and passionate about something, but it doesn't have to be the primary point. And so that's a great mental state to be in.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's all about trying to figure out what what your cloud nine is and what my cloud nine is are totally two different things.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but a lot of people spend a lifetime trying to figure out what their cloud nine is and never reach it.
Yep. Yeah. It's tough. Uh, there's a lot of expectations from other people about what our life should be. We live those. Um, and the reality is, most people live kind of by this philosophy of enlightened hedonism, I think is a good phrase for it, which is like, we know sex, drugs, rock and roll, that's going to be limited and bad for us, so we avoid that. But we're like, hey, if I travel um, a bunch, or I go to the beach with friends and have drinks with them, or I go out to a nice meal, those are like kind of deeper pleasures. Nothing wrong uh,
Hmm.
per se with any of that, but is that fulfillment, is that meaning, is that purpose? And really, meaning, fulfillment, purpose, a lot of that is when it stops being about yourself. It starts
Hmm.
about something bigger than you. And for some people, they first really experience that when they become a parent and go, oh, This is no longer about me. I had kids because I wanted it for me, but now once you're a parent, you realize like that's not the case anymore. But you have this sense of meaning and purpose when you're raising a kid that is way deeper than any of those enlightened hedonist experiences ever could be. And but I think people also find that in other passions that they're pursuing. They realize that they're part of something that is bigger than them, and they're serving that bigger purpose. That is meaning, fulfillment. That is a life well lived. And people who find that, they know it. They know it's different than that enlightened hedonism, just pursuing the next nice meal, etc. Um, we've lost it a bit in modern day society. We're told this enlightened hedonism, one more pleasurable experience, and then you'll feel good. And we chase it, and we just feel worse. But there are paths there towards a life that feels well lived.
Mhm. Well, what, and it's amazing to me just walking around um, DC where I live. And I don't know if it's like this where you live, but it's like constantly being bombarded by like advertisements of like try this next sandwich or like try this drink or like you
Yeah.
know go like try this car, like buy this car, and it's like sometimes I don't know, like sometimes I just don't want to know what's out on the market, and I just want to put in my headphones and like listen to my favorite music and just go around the park and kind of be alone with my thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's sensible. It's how it works. Is people want you to want different things,
Hmm.
and then you just start walking around. Oh, if I had that, oh, it'd be nice to have that. And I think at space it's fine, um, but it's you can get carried away with it where you're constantly in a state of like, if I had these other things, then I'd be good. Uh, and it's really easy to lose how many good things we currently have. And most people are constantly in that state of like, if I had that, versus few people are in the state of like, oh man, what do I have already? It's amazing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
how do
it's
we get
just
that?
yeah. Well, and it's just amazing to me how it's very easy to trick people into believing things that they think they need, but they really don't need.
Yep. Yeah. And again, and I think if you have that passion or sense of meaning, it's a bigger purpose outside of yourself,
Hmm.
then it kind of becomes clear what is meaningful. You're like, this book will help me fulfill that passion or that bigger thing. So this is more valuable than all the other like trinkets out there that are people are waving around trying to get my attention with. Like it becomes really clear what's valuable, what's not. But if you don't have that, then you just walk around getting intrigued by all the different things out there and chasing one pleasure after another.
Hmm. Yeah, d definitely. And Anson, where can people learn more about you? Where can they download the app?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Anson Whitmer, and getmental.com. We like to tell people it's time to get mental, um, even though the name of the app is just mental, and you can find it in the App Store and also Google Play Store.
Awesome. Well, and also too, don't forget to subscribe to the AI Healthcare Report, which is released once a week. Also too, AI Healthcare Podcast, which you can also find on YouTube, as well as posted on LinkedIn. I post episodes twice a month, and then also to a weekly, or excuse me, a end of the month newsletter called the FDA Roundup, which just talks about kind of what's going on in Washington D.C. Um, top 5 things that I think are really cool. Um, this is Dylan Reed signing off. Thank you so much for your time, Anson.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.